Finally cooking up a top 5 list for Violence District. We're going to be starting out pretty strong by having a top 5 best survivor perks top 5 list, and personally we're going to be going over the 5 best perks to equip out of, let's be honest, a pretty awful amount of perks for survivors.
Number 18.
Starting off for the newbies, the best one in the number 5 spot, and that is Windows of Opportunity, aka Eyes of Heaven. Windows of Opportunity, or Eyes of Heaven, essentially allows the survivor player to see all nearby windows and available pallets within a pretty sizable radius. And aside from that, that's all of this perk does. There's not really a whole lot to this perk. However, in actual gameplay, it is a very good perk, especially for beginners of this game. This was personally my first perk that I essentially equipped or more or less grabbed when I started playing this game, like around 2 weeks ago or something like that. And after grinding a lot and playing this game quite a lot, I was able to really just, like, I guess, memorize all of the locations. So I personally just stopped using this perk. However, that doesn't mean that once you essentially memorize all of the locations of pallets and windows, that this perk is just completely meaningless. Because even while using this perk, even though you have all of the memory spots of every single location of windows and pallets, this perk is still quite useful since, well, it shows you all available pallets, meaning all pallets that haven't been destroyed or even thrown down from your fellow teammate survivors. And not only that, but it also allows you to essentially think of your next move and where to go and not to essentially take the killer into to chase you. As an example, into corners of areas where there's literally no pallets, and then other locations where there are just plenty of pallets and windows to essentially help you to not die. This perk is honestly just useful no matter what point you are in the game. However, it is on the number 5 spot, the lowest spot, because it does get essentially easily replaceable once you memorize every single spot.
Number 10.
The number 4 spot we have are 2 very situational perks, but these are On My Own and Last Stand. Now, I couldn't really decide which one was necessarily better, as they both are exactly the exact situation. However, they provide different benefits. Once you are the last remaining survivor in the whole game, these 2 perks instantly are activated. For On My Own, opening the exit gates are 60% faster at max level for On My Own, which is honestly pretty damn great, especially when, you know, you're the last one alive. And also, this perk allows you to see the killer's location for the first 5 seconds as you are announced to be the final survivor remaining. And Last Stand is basically kind of the same. However, instead of opening exit gates faster, you instead heal 1 health state and can see the killer for a whole 20 seconds, which is pretty damn phenomenal. And aside from that, these 2 perks are essentially endgame only perks, especially when they only kick in and or activate when you are the final survivor. And these are pretty situational perks because obviously you need to be the last one in order for these to make a difference, but also these perks are extremely damn useful if you're trying to go for, you know, clutch plays and whatnot, as of course once you're the last survivor, the killer is obviously checking both exit gates rapidly without trying to let you win. So having these 2 perks literally being endgame literal saviors will literally save the game and give you a clutch. By the way, these 2 are great solo clutching perks.
Number 7.
Delivering a second chance into the number 3 spot we have is High Karma. Now, as you guys all know, for the people who play Dead by Daylight, which is everyone, Deliverance and High Karma are exactly 2 of the same perks. After successfully unhooking a fellow survivor, High Karma, aka Deliverance, will be activated, and the very next time you go onto your very first hook, and note only on your first hook, you have the ability to freely unhook yourself and immediately be off the hook and start running for as far as you can. And aside from that, that's basically High Karma, aka Deliverance. A pretty, honestly, very good perk, since, well, allowing you to literally unhook yourself anytime as long as you're on your first hook is fantastic. Especially when you're the last survivor, or perhaps when the exit gates are open and everyone else is trying to get to you, but the killer's camping. You can essentially unhook yourself and immediately make a run for it. However, it's not all sunshines and rainbow with this perk, because there are 2 pretty big downsides. The first one isn't that bad. After unhooking yourself successfully, you are given a 60-second anti-heal effect where you can't heal, which I mean isn't really that bad. However, the second biggest downfall of this perk, if you get hooked before this perk activates, aka unhook a fellow friend, this perk no longer works at all because this only works on your very first hook and only on your first hook. So your second hook and your third hook won't have any difference. And of course, if you're on your first hook and you didn't unfortunately unhook a fellow survivor, or you were the one who was hooked for the very first time in the match, honestly, this perk doesn't really do anything and it's just a waste of space. But aside from that, this perk is very, very great.
Number 12.
Unsurprisingly, the only two speedy perks in the game, number 2 spot we have is Perfect Landing and Quick Recovery, aka Balanced Landing and Life. Now these two perks are obviously to number 2 spot because they are literally just musts. However, just don't get them both together because they both, after using them, give you the Winded status effect, aka the Exhaustion status effect, where you are unable to use these perks for the next 40-ish seconds. However, since these two are the only good perks, they're pretty much just musts no matter which one you choose. However, I more or less like Perfect Landing, aka Balanced Landing, because after jumping off a pretty high point, you are given a 50% speed boost for around 3 whole seconds, and of course you quickly recover much faster after jumping off a high point. While Life, on the other hand, aka Quick Recovery, allows you to essentially have a much smaller speed boost after fast vaulting a window for a few seconds. And these two are essentially the only best of the best perks in this game currently, and of course are literally musts. Depending which one you prefer is essentially in the number 2 spot, but personally I liked Perfect Landing, aka Balanced Landing, more because of just how much more of a bigger speed boost this gives you, and also just how much more quickly recovering after jumping off a high point this can actually make a difference for, especially on maps where jumping off a, like for an example, 2nd story window or perhaps a hill would really be a negative for you, since the killer can quickly catch up as he doesn't have any effects since his ankles are made out of steel. And Balanced Landing is the best clutch, especially taking advantages of all the high points and quickly getting a speed boost and running away, alongside Life being as well a very handy ability for a quick getaway.
Number 1.
Check this out.
Finally getting into the number 1 spot, it could not have been any more obvious, but this has to go to Flow State, by far the best survivor perk currently in the game, as there is 0 to no downsides whatsoever. While this perk is activated, the very next time you fast vault a window, your speed going through that window is immensely increased, aka feeling like you literally just teleport onto the other side of the window. And then afterwards, this perk just goes on a cooldown for 50 seconds itself. However, if you are paying a little bit of attention, I said perk, it goes on cooldown itself, meaning that this perk does not apply the Winded status effect, meaning that you are able to use all other speedy perks that inflict the Winded status effect after usage, meaning you can essentially have this perk alongside 2 of the speediest perks in the game and literally become the quickest and most slippery survivor in the entire game. You can essentially vault over windows quickly and then afterwards run super fast, or jump off a balcony and run super fast while alongside going through windows at an insanely fast speed. And the fact that none of these perks at all contradict one another, because this perk doesn't inflict the Winded status effect while these other two do, makes it to where you can literally just use both of these perks in the same loadout without any repercussions. I cannot tell you guys how many times this mortuary setup, aka more or less this perk, Flow State, has saved my ass from getting ripped to shredded from the most sharpest knives from the killers. But this perk is by far the best perk currently in the game to use, especially in the speediest combos for survivors.